Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set.
Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands, around the world on the iHeart Radio application. Download it today. It is free. The website as well. Plenty of free content. We'd love to have your support, however, as we roll along. Just $63.17. That's right. I said it. $63.17 to become a part of our website and support the radio show. 17 cents a day, essentially, if you like what you get here and you like hanging out with us. So yesterday on the program, we talked with William Qualkenbush. And, you know, we were getting into the dynamics of the NFL playoffs, which I know with the way the Kansas City Buffalo Bills game ended, so many people were like, man, it was the victory was served up by a coin toss. And there's a couple of things, and I really need a statistician, I think, more than anything. But I do wonder a couple of things going back to the coin toss briefly here. So if you're a math guy, lock in on this real fast. Like I get it, right? A coin toss is a 50-50 proposition. I 100% understand it's a 50-50 proposition. But if you have to call the coin toss, and it is still, I get it, like it's still a 50-50 proposition. But it does feel like maybe taking the old heads or tails out of it and having a coin with either team on it might, I don't know. That to me is number one. Like I'd rather see a coin flip where there is no one calling it. And I don't know. Again, I think it's still 50-50, but for whatever reason, that whole calling it thing to me is, I don't know. I just would rather see it the other way, I think. Number two, how would you change the overtime period? I mean, the NFL's clearly gotten it better than what it used to be. A field goal used to win it in overtime, and it was ridiculous. Teams would get the ball, march 40 yards, and kick a field goal. In today's NFL, if you do that, the other team still gets a possession. They get the right to go down and tie the game with a field goal or win the game with a touchdown. I think you just modify that. And I think you give each team a possession. I mean, if you're just bound and determined that you got to change it, this would be my solution. If you have a better one, text me. And if we can't get to it in segment one, we'll get to it later in the show. 803-450-0086. Or call and let me know what you think. It's not exactly the most textable topic. But I think that both teams getting a possession, and as I said yesterday when talking to Qualk, I think that if Buffalo gets that possession after giving up a touchdown, I think where it makes it truly intriguing is the fact that the second team that has possession won, and I know it kind of changes the game from what's normal, but one, they've got to go for it on every fourth down, right? So it's an exciting time of the game. And two, if and when they score, they can then risk it for the biscuit from the 3-yard line and go for 2 to win the ball game. Like, that to me is the part of this that I go, intrigue. Because are you willing to send it back to, or are you willing to give the ball back to the opponent, knowing that a field goal at that point would win the game for them? So you go touchdown, touchdown, field goal, or do you go touchdown, touchdown, 2-point conversion to win it? And let's keep the ball out of our opponent's hands. Because in that scenario, I would argue that not getting the ball first might be the play. It might be the decision to make. You know how teams defer to the second half? Teams at that point might say, I'd rather be the other team. And I'll take that even a step further. Maybe the team that gets the ball second should not have to score a touchdown to win the game. Maybe they should be allowed just to kick a field goal to win it. So if you take the ball first in overtime in the NFL and you punt, then if you give up a field goal, you've lost the game. I mean, I'm not saying that, I don't know that that's the answer, but what it might get teams to do, instead of always taking the football in overtime, these teams might defer. And so you would essentially play it the way that I just set it out, except for the fact that if the opponent scores a touchdown the first possession, obviously you got to go score the first possession and then a field goal wins it. But if you hold them, well, the benefit of going on defense and getting the hold first is that a field goal wins it for you. I don't know that that's a terrible way to go out either. Then both teams would have been on offense. The team that won the toss may have deferred, or if you just felt good with your offense, you could accept it and have the football and go with it. I mean, I don't need a perfect solution. I definitely know that what we have now is better than what we had previously. But if you're asking me, one way to improve it, that's one. Qualk brought up another thought process, and that was giving each team a possession from the 50-yard line. Extending it out a little further than the college game. Definitely the college 2-point nightmare is not where you want to head, but I think play the regular game, except both teams get a possession no matter what happens, and the second team to possess the ball can kick a field goal to win it if they get the stop. To me, that's there's more strategy in what you want to do. Do you want to take the ball? Or do you want to defer and have the option to kick a field goal to win the game? I think that would at least jazz it up some. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. And I'll give credit to the NFL on this. They backed the extra point up plenty to make it more challenging, because there was a day and age where in the NFL the extra point was laughable. And I think that it's a league that obviously wants to make games more interesting and more competitive. And you can even see it now in the NFL where teams will look at it and go, well, you know what? We can go for 2 from 3 yards out versus kicking that extra point. And, in a scenario where you're down 7-0 and you get the ball, I think that becomes a more thought out decision by coaches in overtime. Because I think you go, well, you know what? We can always go for 2 and win this game right now. I don't know. I know this. I don't want to get to a field goal kicking contest. There's one sport that's really missed the boat, and that's soccer. I mean, the fact that the World Cup can be decided by penalty kicks, man, that is That's one that's really, really missing it. That is the NFL deciding the Super Bowl with a field goal contest. That is the NBA deciding a game with a dunk contest or a three-point shootout or a free throw shootout. Oh, we're going to overtime here at the NBA Finals, and now it's time for the dunk contest. What are we doing? That is bad. That is bad. I will say this. As much as you want to complain about the NFL or people want to complain about the NFL's overtime, man, it's so much better than the way they end soccer matches at the highest level. At the highest level, too. 803-450-0086, text line, phone line. Again, let us know, how would you change the NFL overtime period? And I hope I never said playoff. I may have said playoff at one point. I didn't mean to. I meant the overtime period. How would you adjust the NFL's overtime period in order to make it better for fans? Again, I said yesterday, Qualk didn't agree with this, but I said yesterday that Buffalo's defense got an opportunity. I mean, they could have gotten a stop and they didn't. Like, the game is played on both ends of the court both ends of the field by different people. It's not like basketball played on both ends of the court by the same people. I mean, your job as a defender is to keep the offense out of the end zone. And they didn't do it. And they were given a chance. And yeah, they were tired. And yeah, I think probably Buffalo goes down and scores if they get the ball first. But I don't know that. What I do know is, in the situation they currently play in, Buffalo didn't get the stop. Kansas City got the touchdown, and the touchdown's the walk-off winner in the NFL. Could it be better? Yes. Is there a way that you have thought of that I, haven't said yet? Let me know. That's what I'm looking for. A way to make the NFL playoffs a better game than it already is. I even thought about this one. Qualk said something about, put 10 minutes on the clock. And maybe that's it. You play one more 10-minute period, and the way it goes is the way it goes. And if it doesn't end, if it's still tied after 10 minutes, play another 10-minute period. And if it's still tied, play another one. What I would imagine would probably happen is that the team who gets the ball first in that scenario might attempt to juice most of the clock. But that's okay, because the next period, the other team would have that same opportunity. And even if you scored with a 5 or 6 minute drive, you're still leaving. Even if you went 7 minutes, you're still leaving 3 minutes for that team to have the football. And in the NFL, that is an eternity for a team. That is an absolute eternity for a team on the gridiron. 803-450-0086. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But those are just a couple of ideas on that front. And again, I think what you really want to get rid of more than anything in the NFL, to me, is the tie in the regular season. And that is still something that happens in the NFL. Thank goodness collegiately we do not have ties anymore. I mean, they finally got that. That is, I was at the Clemson, South Carolina game in the early to mid 80s. What was that, like 85 or 86, somewhere in there, where Clemson and South Carolina, I think the final score was like 21-21 or 22-22. Whatever it was, it doesn't matter. I don't need to dig into the Google machine to find the result. All I know is there is very little in sports more disappointing than staying in an arena for 3.5 hours against your arch rival who you only play once a year. And after all of the buildup, after all of the pomp and circumstance around that game, you end it with a tie, nobody wins. Come on. Like in the NFL, I can't believe that's still a thing. I cannot believe that in the NFL in 2022, we still have tie ball games. Now, in the postseason, you can't have a tie. Obviously, they've got to continue to play it out. But in the regular NFL, in the NFL regular season, let me say it that way, after the end of overtime one, there is no second overtime period. It's one and done, and we're going home tied. Now, that is another reason to go ahead and do the 10-minute periods, because then you extend the game without significantly extending the game. And I don't think like two halves are necessary, like a 10-minute first half of overtime and a 10-minute second half of overtime. I just mean you add 10 minutes. If it's still tied, we'll re-up another 10 and do it again. And if it's still tied, we'll re-up and do it again. But I just don't think it's going to continue to be tied, that amount of time. Somebody's eventually going to break through. Somebody's going to get a stop. And for everybody who loves that sport, loves football in general, if you think back to any ball game that you've ever watched in its entirety, and you don't even have to be in attendance. Like, it is definitely one thing if you are at the game. You spent $200 or whatever it costs to go to a game on a couple of tickets, and all of a sudden, tie ball game, time to go home. No. I'm going to need this game to come to a conclusion. I mean, your boy Swanee is all about making sure that these games come to a conclusion, not a leaving the field with a tie ball game like we did with Clemson and South Carolina many moons ago. I mean, that just, there's the old phrase, it felt like you were kissing your sister. And that's, maybe that's it. I mean, that's, I can't even think about it. It's so bad to spend all those hours rooting and cheering and yelling. And even you can have a game that ends up being like this really tight, close ball game. Like, it's an exciting finish down to the wire. And you get in overtime, the game remains tied, and we go home without a winner. No, do not sign Swanee up for that. In no uncertain terms will I ever advocate for games ending in a tie in any sport. I don't even care if it's like Little League, Rec League, Pee Wee football, whatever. I am your good buddy Swanee is not interested in a tie at all. I would take, matter of fact, I'll put this out there. You guys have had the choice this whole segment to text me your thoughts or give me a call and leave me your ideas on how you would like to see the NFL compete in its overtime. And I'm going to tell you something. If your ridiculous way of finishing a game was that you thought they should start to kick field goals from like 25 yards out, working their way further and further from the goal by 5-yard increments, so the next time will be the 30, the 35, the 40, the 45, the 50, until finally somebody missed. Like, if you came up with that idea, which is a horrible, I'm going to just go and tell you, that is a horrible idea. If you came up with that idea, but I was given the choice between your horrible idea or a tie, I would go with your horrible idea a zillion times over, and I would not even think. You can't present a bad overtime period to me that finishes with an actual conclusion than you can to have me leave the same with that. None of you can have a bad idea. as long as we don't end in a tie. Stay with us. Rocking and rolling along on a Tuesday afternoon, Lawton Swan weekend. If you want to give us your playoff scenario, how would you line it up? You can call 803-450-0086. Leave us a message, or you can text us. Either way, I want to hear from you. I want to know how you would do it. How would you fix it if you had a problem with it? Or are you good with it? Again, in the grand scheme of things, it is incredibly better than it once was. And it's not even close. It's so much better than it used to be. But how would you continue to improve it? 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. 803-450-0086. So that is the latest there. How about the Clemson Tigers academically? Clemson's 12 all ACC academic team selections for 2021 were announced today to lead the conference in football. Clemson with 12 all ACC selections, academic ACC selections. To put that into perspective, Wake Forest was second with 11, Duke with 9, Boston College with 8, Virginia Tech with 7, along with Syracuse, Georgia Tech, and NC State. Virginia with 6, Pitt with 5, Miami with 4, Louisville with 4, Florida State with 4, and North Carolina with 2. Clemson leads the way with all ACC or all ACC academic selections. KJ Henry, BT Potter, Trenton Simpson, Balin Spector, James Skalski, Matt Bockhorst, Walker Parks, Will Spires, DJ Uyunglele, Will Shipley, Nolan Turner, and Will Sweeney. Those 12 players, a dozen, named all ACC academic performers. I mean, think about the significance behind that, given how good Clemson's football team has been. The fact that those guys, even still, and give credit to Wake Forest, right, for the job they did this past season in the Atlantic Coast Conference to get into the ACC championship game against Pitt. But how about those two teams, especially Clemson, with more academic, all ACC academic selections than Wake and Duke, having the most in the entire conference? Man, I'll tell you what, that's what I was talking about yesterday. Clemson is looking for different type players, I think, at this point. And I don't have this on like tape or record, and nobody's ever answered it, but I truly believe that the Clemson Tiger football staff believes that they can be better served with high caliber young men who are 4-star and 3-star players more than they would a kid who is a reach and is an issue on and off the field. And I know it can feel, I guess, for a lot of people, probably counterintuitive that is your modus operandi of how you achieve the level of success that Clemson has. But I think that is a big part of it. I'm certain and comfortable in saying it probably doesn't hurt you that because you've brought in these young men who are astute when it comes down to the educational side of things, they are well versed on game day after being for years, but no shows that when Clemson, I guess, man, that must have been around 2000 and they started to run together 2011, maybe 2010, 2011, somewhere in there, when Stephon Anthony came to Clemson. He's like a 5-star kid. You know, everybody had huge expectations for him, but there was a player on the field that started ahead of him, Spencer Shuey. And it would have seemed that, there was a no-brainer that Stephon Anthony, given his speed, his athleticism, and all this and that, was going to come in and beat out Spencer Shuey for the starting spot. But he couldn't do it. And Shuey continued for a couple of seasons to hold off Stephon Anthony. And I always thought, the thing about it is football at that level is played so quickly that a step misreading a play can be counterproductive, maybe even potentially offsetting a speed differential that you might have over the guy you're battling for playing time. And I kind of always thought that, Spencer Shuey, when I watched, just seemed to have a better nose for the football. You've heard that phrase, a nose for the football. And so the ball snapped, he rarely stepped the wrong way. If the play was going to the right, Shuey was to the right just in a blink. But you couldn't say the same for Stephon Anthony, who might step to the left maybe once, maybe even twice. And thus it didn't matter that he might have a much better 40 time than Spencer Shuey. It didn't matter that he was a better player and would go on to play in the NFL. What mattered is one guy was either A, understanding the formations and the things that were happening sooner in his maturation as a linebacker versus this 5-star kid. Obviously, once Stephon Anthony kind of got his feet underneath him and understood things a little bit better, he eventually did ascend into that starting spot, maybe even after Shuey graduated. But, the thing about it was I always felt like Shuey was just a little bit better prepared. And I think that type of mindset when it comes to recruiting can enhance a recruiting class that may be undervalued because of performance tasks that take place on the field and over productive because of their preparation tasks that happen off. We'll hit a quick break. Stay with us. Well, I don't know how quick that segment went for you, but it flew by for me. So just taking a look here real fast, one of the things I did not get a chance to mention, speaking of recruiting, the Clemson Tigers today picked up another commitment in the 2022 class as Kalon Griffin, 3-star safety. There we go. What was I talking about just a minute ago? That's kind of the carryover here. Out of the state of Alabama, committed to Clemson with a tweet saying 100% all in. Griffin is the second safety in the 2022 recruiting class, joining Under Armour All-American Sherrard Coville Jr. And while he may not be the most nationally recognized name out there, he is a young man that I think fits that description that we just talked about. Griffin, by the way, was down to the Tigers, Nebraska, Southern Cal, and was a one-state commit. And now he is committed to your Clemson Tigers. So that's the exact type player that I'm talking about. And you can go through Clemson's list of recruits in recent memory, and sure, it's littered with 4- and 5-star guys, but it's picking up on players like Kayvon Wallace. It's picking up on guys like Hunter Renfrow. It's picking up on, to a degree, under. This coaching staff believes, might be 6 foot tall, but has a 7 heart. And I think that's one of the things that you can't quantify when you talk about recruiting. You can't put a price tag on the value that it brings your program in your locker room. And with the mindset of what Clemson is trying to be both academically all off the field and physically on the field, that is one of those incredible combinations that I think Sweeney and a few other coaches have been able to piece together in order to create a program that achieves, at the highest level. And I think for South Carolina fans hanging out with us, I believe wholeheartedly that is a similar thought process to Shane Beamer's methods in Columbia. And I think that it will, over the long haul, pay dividends for the Gamecocks. And it's okay if you are a South Carolina fan at this point in Coach Beamer's tenure to say, you know what, I'm okay with the type coach that Dabo Swinney is because my coach is a lot like him, and I see the level of success that Clemson's had. Like, I think if anything, and I don't know that there's much, quote-unquote, endearing that Shane Beamer could do for Carolina fans with Dabo Swinney given their history. It has not been a great history. But if there is one thing that I think Shane Beamer has done for Gamecock Nation, it has presented the model to them that, hey, even though the guy in the upstate might not in your eyes be the great X's and O's wizard of all time when it comes down to college football, he is one of the greatest when it comes down to accumulation of talent, whether that's just raw five-star talent, but more so the accumulation of great individuals who are willing to go the extra mile to help their teammates be successful, putting themselves in a situation to win at a high rate. And I don't know how long it'll take, Shane Beamer. I have said that over with Gamecock fans. I hope you have the patience. Believe me, Clemson fans didn't want to have the patience. And they did have it, and now they are reaping the harvest of great success. But patience is key. And I'll say this too. I do wonder, given the situation with South Carolina and Spencer Rattler joining the program, if the expectations for the Gamecocks aren't bumped up or over elevated by the fact that they've got one of the former top quarterback prospects in America, one of the top prospects for the Heisman Trophy a year ago now at quarterback, arguably before he takes a snap, maybe the greatest quarterback that South Carolina has ever had just in terms of talent. By the way, Gamecocks, I am jealous, very jealous of your schedule next season being posted, still waiting on the Atlantic Coast Conference to get their schedule up. But South Carolina's never got an easy path to any easy path. I can't even, my tongue's twisted here. They never have an easy path, especially in the SEC right now with the way that Georgia's playing, the fact that they've got A&M on their schedule, and the fact that Clemson's on there too. But I think this has a chance to be a better year for Carolina. And I think that 7-5 at this point, kind of given who they've got, is a pretty decent possibility. South Carolina opens versus Georgia State at home. No win. They got to go to Fayetteville, Arkansas in week 2. I don't love that. Just kind of given what we've seen from Arkansas this past year. I think South Carolina is a toss-up game, but I'm going to give it to Arkansas by virtue of being early in the season. I think South Carolina loses to Georgia at home. So I think they'll start. I think they'll beat Charlotte. I think they'll beat SC State. That'll push them out to 5-2. I think they'll have a pretty good chance to beat Kentucky. That's a toss-up game, whichever way you want to go with it. If you give them an L there, that's fine. If you give them a W there, that's fine. Then I think they'll lose to A&M. I think they'll beat Missouri. I think they'll beat Vanderbilt. I think they'll probably end up losing one of two to either Florida or Tennessee. And then I think they'll lose to Clemson, which puts them right at 7-5, 8-4. And I think that that's a really good season. And anything less than that might be disappointing. But it's always a tough schedule. But I believe they've got the right guys. I've said plenty here on the show. Back at it on a Tuesday afternoon, the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk on the Swan with you here. And again, as I said, I think that South Carolina has a chance this year. 7-5. I think if you go positive on a game or two, 8-4. I think if you lean in a little negative, 6-6. 5-7 is out there, but this is a year I think South Carolina finishes at 500 or better. And I'm still angry that I get to see their schedule and not Clemson's. For crying out loud, it's a computer program. Run it. I mean, run it. How hard can it be? Get it together, ACC. Every year I got to have this conversation about how the ACC lags behind the SEC. If the SEC, in terms of the schedule, if the SEC is a OLED 75-inch micro crystal 4K times 8K display, the Atlantic Coast Conference is that old rabbit ear television that so many of you had at college. Not great. Not great at all. I remember when I got like a 19-inch TV, and man, that is huge. When the TV I took to college was probably 12, maybe. I've got monitors for my computer larger than the first TV I took to college. That is a truthful fact. I don't know if there's facts that aren't truthful, but that is one. I can't even lie to you about it. My monitor in front of me here is bigger than the first TV that I took to college in 1995. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. Don't forget, coming up tonight, 7 o'clock, your Clemson Tiger men's basketball team on the road in Durham, taking on the Duke Blue Devils, and it's not exactly been a venue of great success for Clemson all time. Honestly, it's kind of mind-blowing. Clemson comes into this game against Duke 11-8, 3-5 in the ACC. Duke enters 15-3, 5-2 in the ACC. And again, the game 7 o'clock on ESPN 2. But Clemson all time at Duke is a whopping 4-62. If you can believe that. Clemson is 4-62 in Durham. And to put that into perspective, maybe this is kind of rounding out what a tremendous advantage, home court advantage that is. At home, Clemson is 24-39. Nearly 20 games better against the Blue Devils at home. And I know they are in the win column, but the loss column is a little different than they are there in Durham. 4-9 all-time in neutral site games against Clemson. Brad Brownell 3-10 against the Blue Devils all-time. Jay Billis, Reese Davis will be on the call. And speaking of that, I saw Dick Vitale put a post out on social media, the legendary broadcaster from ESPN. He's been dealing with cancer, and he is shutting it down for the year because of some issues with his vocal cords and the fact that his doctors say that he needs to allow those vocal cords to rest up. Vitale, like him the other day, said he wants to be doing play at 100 years old, which I think he's in his 80s now, maybe 78, maybe 82. One way or the other, that's his goal, is to, stay in this business as long as he can. And quite frankly, when I was growing up, Dick Vitale was the voice of college basketball. And some people didn't like him because he was over the top, baby. But There's just something to it. And, yeah, he is 82. But he is shutting it down. But for a generation, Dick Vitale was like John Madden. I mean, he was really like John Madden. It's surprising. Did he ever have – I don't think he did. Did he ever have like a – he may have gone wrong on this front, man. He probably should have put together a college basketball game at some point. I just don't know that he did. Let me see if there was ever a Dick Vitale college basketball video game. I don't see anything right off of the cuff. Video game. Maybe I need to add in there because it's fine and everything. Yes, he did. Look at that. On the Sega Genesis. It's too bad this didn't blow up. 1994. Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops. That was the name of the game. Awesome Baby College Hoops. Look at this. He could have been he could have been the Madden. Dick Vitale could have been the Madden of college basketball. You could get this game too, it looks like, on Amazon for the Sega Genesis. What's the asking price? Only 2 left in stock. What? I bet it's awful. Looks like about $30. Ugh. So he did have a game, but it didn't take off like Madden. Too bad. Too bad. It was a great idea. He would have been the perfect voice for it. There was never really a great college basketball game. If you are a gamer, by the way, they never could get it quite right. It was always different than the NBA games, and the NBA games could be great, and the college basketball games would stink. Just use the same engine and make them, on foot with each other. But it's like they got 2 different departments building these games, and they come out completely different. Just one group at EA Sports needs to make all the football games and all the basketball games and call it a day. All right, we got to hit a break. Hour 2. Mike Yuva joins us next.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan back at it, hanging out with you. We've talked a little college recruiting, football recruiting, a little college basketball. We've talked a little NFL. We've talked a little South Carolina schedule. We've talked a little this, a little that, and now Mike Yuva, Gamecock Central.com joins the program. Mike, welcome back in, man. Hope you're good.
I've been doing well outside of last week's little, swapperoonie here. Felt like I was back in Boston with that weather, but I'll say this was pretty neat to see the reaction of people having so much fun in the snow, because that certainly is not the case up north. When it happens, it's more like, crap, here we go again. But that wasn't the case in Columbia last week.
Hey, Mike, grab the shovel, kid. You got to do the driveway
God.
again.
Oh, I'll tell you what. The winter of 2015, over 110 inches of snow. And I can just remember that. That's the last time that I was really up there for a full winter.
Yeah.
And then I got my first out in Mississippi. But figures that happened right before I left. And just the memories of the mountains of snow just piling up. But, yeah, I mean, that's the difference. I mean, you wake up the next day, it was pretty much all gone. That was a nice change of scenery for me in comparison to what I'm used to.
Okay, so let me ask you something. This and listen, most of the people hearing this show are going to have no idea the answer to this question. Do roofs like collapse under the weight of all the snow that's on them? I mean, is that like an issue at all? Or do you
Oh,
clean
yeah. I
the
mean,
roof off?
well, the issue isn't necessarily the snow itself. It's the fact that, especially, up north, it stays as cold as it does. It can create that ice, and that ice, of course, brings that extra weight. So that's the issue. I mean, the snow, of course, adds an extra weight too. But if it just freezes up there, you basically have cement. I'm trying to figure out a good comparison for it. So that's the issue. So you have to go up there. You have to shovel that stuff off. I mean, you've seen, you don't go up there standing on your room. Now, there's some morons up there that do that.
Oh, what? I saw a guy doing this on TikTok. He had some kind of device that he was doing it with, something.
Yes, it's basically like a 30-foot pole. It has a kind of a shovel, and you kind of just scrape it off. So you want to do that. You want to do that, and you also want to keep your gutters clear, because if you don't, then the water's going to have nowhere to run off, and that's when that extra ice starts to form. And if the ice forms up and there's nowhere to go, well, there's only one place for it to go, which is staying on your roof. If that added weight, depending on how much snow you get that winter, adds up, I mean, you could be having a winter wonderland in your attic.
Come for the sports talk, leave with an education on how to deal with heavy snow in case you move to New England. Mike Yuva from GamecockCentral.com joins us. All right, Mike. So first, before we get into South Carolina, I want to start with the weekend that we saw in the NFL. 4 games finishing on the final play, 3 of them road teams with a field goal to win it. The final game, the home team, the Kansas City Chiefs, in overtime with a touchdown drive on their first possession against the Bills. Give me some of your takeaways from what we saw this past weekend, because it was spectacular.
Shoot, I mean, this might be the best playoff weekend we ever experienced in NFL history when it comes to a divisional round. So, I mean, I can't figure out a way to top it. All 4 games were decided on game-winning plays in the last play of the game. I mean, think about that for a minute. I mean, I can't imagine us ever seeing that ever happen again. So, I think the competition was there. The excitement was there. If you're not a fan of necessarily one of these teams, it kept you engaged. And I think what it shows more than anything is that the game truly has evolved, right? I mean, you look at the teams that were there, and I guess, my point being is what we're noticing now with the NFL is that you need an elite quarterback. There's always going to be that guy that kind of just stands out that, maybe isn't exactly like the rest. And that case might right now be Jimmy Garoppolo. But you look at these teams that have won, and even Matt Stafford, right? You look at what happened with the AFC this weekend. I mean, you need an elite quarterback. You need an elite quarterback if you want to make a deep run. That's just the reality of it. And not just that, but the days of the pocket passer are slowly fading away. And I think that is a direct reflection on just how the college game has changed and how it's catching up to the NFL right now. I mean, Tom Brady's the world. Mac Jones, yes, he's more of a traditional pocket passer, but he can make some things happen with his feet. It's just the game's changing so much. The game's all played on the outside. So those are some of my takeaways, because, I mean, shoot, if this was 10, 15 years ago, yeah, we know Tom Brady, what he's been able to do, but Mahomes, just the way the offense is played nowadays, 13 seconds feels like an eternity in comparison to what it was 15, 20 years ago, because the game itself has changed. So, I enjoyed it, but I look at it like that's Swanee, because I just feel like the game, when you look at it, there's so much excitement, because even if there's just 10, or in this case, 13 seconds left, anything can happen just because of the way the game continues to shift in the NFL.
Mike, so I know, being a guy that watched Tom Brady for so many years, you recognize the purity of his game, if you will, or just the I don't even know the right way to say this, but it's very fundamental. Do you find when you watch Kansas City, like I don't want to sound like I'm saying that they win in spite of Patrick Mahomes, but I think that he can get away with some things that he does that are not fundamental, a lot of times because of the playmakers around him. Like, I think if Pat Mahomes doesn't have a relief valve like Kelsey or a guy like Tyreek Hill, he might feel pretty normal to us all. And maybe some of those things he does, slinging the ball sidearm, no-look passes, I don't know that he gets away with that on every single team in the league.
No, and I'm not trying to sound like a Patrick Mahomes hater, but let's see what happens in the next couple of years, because regardless if the Kansas City Chiefs are able to win the Super Bowl this year or not, the reality is that team, from a salary cap standpoint, they're going to hit a mark where decisions are going to have to be made. I mean, that's what happens when you decide to pay your quarterback $500 million. I mean, we're not talking about monopoly money here. And the difference is, and we've talked about on your show before, what helped the Patriots for so long is that Tom Brady took so many pay cuts, in a large part because, well, he didn't have to be the breadwinner of the house. His wife is a supermodel, for crying out loud. She's getting paid more than him. So, I bring all that up because as talented as Mahomes is, I agree with you. I don't think he's able to get away with a lot of the things that he does do. He's got a lot of confidence, and rightfully so. And you have guys out there like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and you're able to just throw it out there, and they make plays like we saw in those 2 plays in particular at the end of the game that proved to be the game, in regulation, that proved to be some big plays back on the Bills defense. It's interesting to see what happens over time if some of those pieces disappear. But, enjoy the present. Certainly I don't want to see him go out there and win another Super Bowl, because then you're going to hear all the Brady comparisons even more. But it was a lot of fun to watch this past weekend between him and Josh Allen. And, there's going to be questions for years to come as to whether or not the Bills made the right choice kicking it out of the end zone. I mean, 13 seconds. Just squib it. Just squib it.
Squib. My 12-year-old said squib it. Yeah. Before it happened, he said, Dad, you got to squib this.
Well, he's played 12. Madden in his day. He knows. He knows better.
Yeah. You never kick it off deep in that scenario. All right. So final thing on the NFL front, Mike. A lot of people out there complaining about the NFL's playoff. Look, it's a lot better than it used to be. I gave a scenario that I would like to see because I think there would be some intrigue. And I'll give it to you as briefly as I can. I do think both teams should get a possession. I think why that would be interesting is I believe that the second team that gets the ball would have a great choice to make, either to go for 2 from 3 yards out to win the game or kick the extra point and try to play defense again. And then have a field goal at that point be the difference maker. So it really challenges that second, the team that has the second possession to maybe go for 2. What are your thoughts on how the NFL does the playoffs, and would you change it?
The overtime, you mean, correct?
Yes, I said playoffs. I meant overtime. Yeah, I did that earlier, I think, as well. But yeah.
No, I'm not the brightest person, so I just wanted to make sure.
No, you got it. You're with me.
So I think the reality is this. I have no issue with them keeping the overtime format that they currently have in the regular season, because what the NFL is going to continue to fall back on is the fact of player safety. I get that. You don't want these games to continue to expand. I mean, that's the reason why the NFL a couple of years ago, they shrunk overtime from 15 minutes to 10 minutes in the regular season, because they want to do everything they can to not extend these games as teams get prepared, whether it's a Monday night game and they have to play, on a Sunday the following week, or I get it. They understand that in that regard. As far as the playoffs is concerned, I took to Twitter after the game and I said the Bills have no one to blame but themselves, because they had an opportunity to end it in regulation. Now, with that being said, looking big picture, to answer your question, I would have no issue with the NFL keeping the format that they currently have, but allowing the team that did not have a possession to be able to have a possession. And I think that's what a lot of people want to see. One wrinkle of that, though, that I would suggest if they were to ever make that rule, especially for the playoffs, is to allow the home team to be the team that decides what they want to do. Because at that point, it makes the regular season, it makes those standings meaningful. So if you're the higher seed, which in this case was Kansas City, you get to elect whether you want to kick off or you want to receive. Because at that point, like you said, if you kick off, you're going to have a choice, that you're going to have a chance to be able to get the ball back. But now you know exactly what the other team did, and now you know exactly what you have to do. So I don't know if that's really been talked about a lot, but I've looked at that because I'm just like, what can you do? Because everyone's talking about a coin deciding everything. Now, I can't sit here and say I hate the rules, because If it wasn't for that, the Patriots wouldn't have won 2 more Super Bowls. They beat the Falcons because of it. Sorry, Falcons fans. And on top of that, they beat Kansas City to go to the playoffs, who, oh, by the way, in 2019, Kansas City wanted to change the rules. They told the NFL, we want to change it. And, you know, what happens 3 years later? They're the ones on the other side of it, and they luck out.
The other
it didn't get changed.
Yeah, one other way I would think that you could do this to make it maybe a little more interesting to entice people to kick off in overtime would be to keep it the same except the second possession. So whenever the other team gets it at any point, a field goal wins it. You know, because right now, both teams, right, have the opportunity to score a touchdown. You have to score a touchdown. I would say that the second team, if they get possession, could kick a field goal to win it and call it a day. I don't think that's –
I mean, look, and Swanee, I'm sure you would agree with me, and a lot of your listeners would agree too. I'm just grateful that the overtime format is better than it used to be. I mean, think about how bad that was. I mean, you want to talk about deciding on a coin toss, that decided, because all you have to do is get down to about the 40-yard line. Majority of these kickers can make that kick, and I understand the type of game that was. I mean, it was an absolute shootout. At the end of the day, though, that's not a guarantee. I don't care who the quarterback is. You have professional defensive players out there. There's no excuse, regardless of who you're going up against. There's no excuse not to be able to make a stop. 3 straight possessions, they couldn't get a stop. So, like I said, big picture, I agree that the overtime rules need to be looked at. But as far as the Bills are concerned, you had your opportunity. You had your opportunities, and you just could not get a stop when it mattered the most.
Mike Uva's on Twitter at Mike_UVA. Again, GamecockCentral.com, the website. All right, so, Mike, I was looking at South Carolina's football schedule because, you know, the SEC's got apparently better computers than the ACC, and they've got it out, and the Atlantic Coast Conference doesn't. I think the South Carolina team with Spencer Rattler just kind of leaning in or very early, way too early, look at it. I think this team could go 7-5 this year, and I don't think that's a stretch. There are certainly a couple of swing games that could put them at 5-7, but I think they are at 500 or better in year 2 under Shane Beamer. Is that a good take or a bad take?
I don't think it's a bad take. I mean, I'm one of those losers that won't make a decision on record predictions until after spring ball, just because I want to see what the actual team looks like on the field. Because I think the reality is this, and I may have said this on your show in the past, Wani. When Beamer got here from Oklahoma, I think naturally a lot of people expected them to go out there and try to replicate what Oklahoma did from an offensive standpoint. Spread it out, throw the ball all over the yard, give South Carolina fans excitement on offense, something that they have lacked. Well, this past season, and we know there's certain things that happen along the road, along the lines of coaching leave, like Bobo decides to leave to go to Auburn.
Right.
And then Marcus Satterfield comes in from the NFL, from the Carolina Panthers as an assistant on the offensive side. So I don't know if that really made that much of a difference, but people will point to that a little bit. I think the reality is this. You had to look at what you had to work with. How do you expect to replicate that when there were so many question marks at wide receiver? And there's still questions at wide receiver for this team. They were able to obviously do a lot of exciting things in that Duke's Mayo Bowl. No question about it. Can they replicate that? And not only can they replicate that, what will it look like now that you have Spencer Rattler, who I continue to refer to as makeup, because he's going to be able to cover up a lot of blemishes on the offensive side for USC. And he's going to be – you don't need All-Americans across the board. You don't need All-Americans at wide receiver and running back. You just need to be able to give the guy just a little bit of time and get open. I mean, we saw in that Duke's Mayo Bowl, they have the weapons to be able to do some exciting things on offense this year. There's no question about it. But what does that look like now with Spencer Rattler? And what does this offense look like from a schematical standpoint now that you have that makeup at your disposal after not having it a year ago? So that's the biggest question, because from a win-loss standpoint, yes, when I look at the schedule, 7 wins, 8 wins, it could be there. But you know what? That ceiling could be higher depending on what this offense comes out and tries to do now that you have Rattler. At this point, we have no idea what Marcus Satterfield, what Shane Beamer have up their sleeves heading into spring football and what this offense could look like then and what it will look like week one.
I agree 100%. I think it's a bit of a disadvantage for South Carolina that they play at Arkansas in week 2, Mike. I think that Georgia, A&M, and Clemson are just 3 of the top teams and are going to be tough to beat no matter what. So you kind of start out, and Gamecock fans, they don't like my honesty, but that's okay because they got to come and hear the honesty. The fact is, you probably are starting with 3 losses in your hip pocket anyway if things just go as well as they possibly could. Maybe you get fortunate. A couple of years ago, they beat Georgia. Maybe they find a way to knock off Clemson this year in Death Valley, in a shocking result, I think, for most people. But I feel like, if you just lose 2 other games and you're 7-5, you got to be pretty excited about the step forward. And that's the thing. It's all relative. And they've got 3 teams that 98% of the teams in college football would lose to on any given Saturday. That's Georgia, Texas A&M, and Clemson, in my estimation. Mike, buddy, always appreciate you. Let the Gamecock fans know I don't hate them. They can come listen to the show that shakes the Southland.
Swati, they're always welcome to come on and listen to you. And I'll say this. I spoke with a member of the Gamecock coaching staff just this past weekend, and it's trying to remind them they haven't accomplished anything yet. There's more confidence in that building now than there has been in the past year, but they understand that they still have a long, long ways to go, and this is something the coaching staff just continues to remind them. So this is going to be something new because a lot of those players in that building, they have not had to handle or had to deal with handling success, just the reality of it. So what will that look like when everyone else is kissing your butt on the outside going into a season? That's something this coaching staff is focused on right now of managing.
Great point, Mike. Follow him on Twitter at Mike_UVA. Mike, we'll talk to you next week, buddy.
Appreciate you, Swanee.
All truth. Spot the line. There's none there. Mike Uva. 803-450-0086. Again, coming up tonight, 7 o'clock. Your Clemson Tigers on ESPN2 will take on the Duke Blue Devils. The Blue Devils, ranked inside the top 10, are 15-3, 5-2 in the ACC. Clemson checks in at 11-8, 3-5. And boy, could Clemson ever use a victory in a game like this. Just 4-62 all-time on the road in Durham against the Blue Devils. How ridiculous is that? Stay with us. Clemson Sports Talk on a Tuesday. So I was just sitting here looking at the NFL playoff rules during the break, and I did, or not the NFL playoff rules, the NFL overtime rules during the break, and I noticed something that I did not realize or had not paid attention to because I guess I have been so focused on the fact that if the first team scores, the second team has to score a touchdown, obviously. But I'm surprised teams don't defer and kick off instead and play defense. But in the NFL, if the first team doesn't score a touchdown, the second team, no matter how they score, can win the game. So it is a field goal. So in some respects, there is a little chess game that goes on there at the overtime period because if you choose to go on defense, you're saying, hey, we'll throw it out there. The problem, I think, at this point with the way that is set up is that it's still so easy for that first team to get a field goal. So it doesn't enhance your thought process on sort of deferring and getting the ball second. So I don't know how you fix that because I guess teams would still, in the scenario I presented earlier, they'd still kick a field goal if push came to shove. So I don't know. I don't know how you fix it other than to make sure both teams get a possession. I mean, that's got to be number one. I did see this, though, kind of reading through it. Both teams must have the opportunity to possess the ball once during the extra period unless the team that receives the opening kickoff scores a touchdown on its initial possession, in which case it is the winner. Or, get this, if the team kicking off to start the overtime period gets a safety during that possession. So, and look, I know it's hard when you kick the football off to ever imagine that you're going to end up getting a safety to win an NFL game. But there it is. It actually could happen, I guess, in the rules. If a touchdown to score, the game is over. The try is not attempted. But yeah, the second team can just get a field goal. But I'm surprised that's not a strategy that's utilized. But I think the reason is because in the NFL, most teams believe that the other opponent is going to get a field goal no matter what. It's just so easy to do. So maybe what the NFL needs to do to enhance this a little bit is, how about set the, instead of a kickoff to open overtime, I like this. I like where my brain is on this one. Let's spot the ball at the 3-yard line and have 97 yards to go. Now we've got the safety potentially in play. Now we've got a long drive so that the field goal isn't the thing, and maybe, just maybe, a willingness to defer and hope that you get a bad punt and kick a field goal and win the game. I mean, maybe we need to move them out more from the 3. Maybe they need to be at the 5 or the 10. I think something like that might actually be better, quite frankly. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. But I do think both teams need the football. Both teams definitely deserve to have the football, especially in the playoffs. No doubt about that, especially in the playoffs. Let's see. Billy chimes into the program today. He says, Swanee, I remember saving up and buying a 27-inch tube TV and a VCR for my sophomore year in 1990. And I kept that TV until I know after 2000. Yeah, you know why you kept that TV until after 2000, Billy? Because it weighed 300 pounds. You had to have. I mean, remember those TVs? Holy moly. It took 3 people to move a television set back in the day. I can snatch a television out of my kid's room in a blink. They've got like 32-inch TVs. I can carry both of them up and down the stairs at the same time. I can't even carry both kids up and down the stairs. I can carry their TVs, no problem. But if I were to go find one of those old 27-inch TVs that Billy's talking about, or go a little bigger, Billy, go get you like a 32 back in the day. Yeah. You're not moving that bad boy. Not by yourself. If you were probably going to have to go to a chiropractor or a back doctor or somewhere. You're going to need to be adjusted. We had a TV. My dad, golly, what was that television called? It was a Sony. It was like a 32-inch. That was a Pro Scan. But it was made by Sony, I think. Pro Scan. What year did this TV come out? I'm trying to Google it, man, real quick. You can't even find how much they weighed back in the day. Between 40 and 60 pounds. It had to be 60 pounds on that 32. And it's an awkward 60 pounds. It felt like 200 pounds. That old Pro Scan, though, actually, I did see a picture of one, and I remember it had a huge screen. It was heavy as lead. Buddy, I thought I was big time over on Creekside Drive in Clemson, because I think I ended up either taking that TV with me to college, or me and my roommate ended up getting one. I can't remember. I just know this. We had one, and you didn't move it. You didn't rearrange. Not at all. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, be a part of the program anytime, any place, anywhere, via the text line. Or don't forget about our website. Put the .com on it. Doggone it. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com as your Clemson Tigers get set for their matchup coming up in a little over an hour. They'll be tipping it off in Durham, looking for their 5th win in Durham all time. Just 5 total wins between all of their games in Chapel Hill and Durham. But at least they got one in Chapel Hill. Let's go get one for the thumb when it comes down to Durham tonight as Clemson will be taking on Coach Mike Krzyzewski's Duke Blue Devils in Krzyzewski's last season as the head coach of the Blue Devils. 803-450-0086. With a quick break, we'll come back with more of the show that shakes the Southland as we roll along with you here on a Tuesday afternoon. Stay with us. The show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan with you on Twitter at Clemson Sports. Make sure you give us a follow over there. Tell your friends and neighbors and your friends' neighbors about us and put the .com on it, doggone it, the website, ClemsonSportsTalk.com. So we do have some updates to the College Football Playoff Committee as Athletic Director Ward Manuel has joined the CFB Selection Committee along with former longtime coach Jim Grobe, Navy Athletic Director Chet Gladchuk, and former USA Today sports writer Kelly Whiteside. That news came out earlier today. NC State Athletic Director Boo Corrigan, who is entering his second season on the committee, will be the chair of the 13-member group, and he will replace Iowa Athletic Director Gary Barta, whose term has expired. Other committee members whose terms expired include Paula Bovine, Charlie Cobb, and Tyrone Willingham. The CFB's management committee, which is composed of the 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame Athletic Director Jack Swarbrick, nominated Corrigan as the committee chair, and the 4 new members will begin 3-year terms this spring. So the College Football Playoff Committee, as it does every year, has a little shift in terms of who is on the committee and how it all sets out. And you know what? I think that's one thing that maybe over the past couple of years, yes, it is a committee that has been discussed. Yes, it's a committee that has been focused on, but it really does feel like that this group, while often scrutinized, I mean, in my estimation, I think they've done a pretty good job. I mean, I know I've been, I have not had like verbal assaults on the college football playoff or the way it's set up, but I mean, I think for the most part, the committee's given us, I can't say great playoff games because that's not up to them. It's really about delivering the teams that you think have the right to be there in the top 4. And I think for the most part, they've done that. Maybe here or there's 1 or 2 that are missed, but I can't really fault them. And what I would love to do, and I think as media members, as fans, I think it would be healthy for the College Football Playoff Committee to open things up a little bit in terms of allowing you a better way to, quote, simulate what it's like to be in that room and what it's like to crunch those numbers and to look at those teams. The other thing that I think might be an enhancement to the way this is done, and do you ever see these tweets where people will put out like a blind copy? They'll say, and David Hale from ESPN will do this. It'll say Team A, and it gives you a resume. Team B, and it gives you a resume and results or whatever. Team C, it lays it all out there. But you don't know who these teams are. And I might be willing to lean in on a simulation, if you will, even for people, or maybe even the committee do it like this, where you don't know the names. What would be wrong, honestly? And it's hard to think about this outside of like a sandbox and practicing it, but what would it hurt if the College Football Playoff Committee did not know the names of the teams they were evaluating? I mean, sure, they might have an idea or be able to kind of guess who somebody might be based off of some bit of information, but they might not be certain. Like, what if every team was just numbered 1 through whatever? And the committee looked at the rankings or looked at the data sets, if you will, just based off of that blind, whatever you want to call it, blind metrics, And then maybe even put one based off of the eye test and compare the two. And maybe they do that behind closed doors. I have no idea. I'd love to do it. Like, I would love to have like a blind survey where I look at the teams and the numbers and just talk about data points and who they, how many top 25 teams did they beat, how many of this, how many of that, and what's the margin of victory, and do it that way. I wonder if it would be, what would be intriguing? 2 playoff committees, 1 actual committee that is continuing to do it the way we do it now, and then another committee made up of ex-committee members. That'd be fine. That'd be even better. People who've already done it the one way, and just see if the blind model comes up with similar results. Because that's the measure, right, that you're really looking for. Nobody wants to feel like there's bias based off of, oh, you're Alabama, or, oh, you're Clemson, oh, you're Ohio State. I think people want to feel like the teams are placed in there because they've earned it, and metrics are deemed in the mind's eye of a lot of people as quote unquote earning it. And what would that look like? That would be incredible, wouldn't it? And what if you saw it week by week? Like, what if week by week they put out the actual ones by the real committee, and then the blind, I don't know what you'd call that other committee, but sort of the blind scenario where you don't know who the teams are. I mean, if they matched up, that would be great for the sport, I think. If they were miles apart, it might tell us something about our evaluation and the fact that maybe we should consider tweaking it a little bit. I mean, look, I'm not telling you there's any quote-unquote perfect system. I don't think anybody believes that either. But wouldn't it be cool to compare notes on that front? 803-450-0086. I've learned a little bit more about roofing here as Billy's hit us up. I'll get to Billy's text when we get back to put a bow on the show that shakes the Southland as we roll along with you on a Tuesday afternoon here in the great state of South Carolina and beyond for all our listeners on the iHeart Radio app. Stay with us. Final segment coming up next.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Tuesday afternoon, 803-450-0086. Before the break, I asked the question, I mean, would you be interested in seeing like a blind resume of the college football playoff put together by human beings, maybe even former committee members, every year or every week, just to compare it? I mean, even if ESPN, like, here's the thing, right? ESPN has the most of the metrics, certainly, in data that the College Football Playoff Committee needs. Maybe ESPN needs to have their own blind group that puts it together, not knowing any of the names. It says, hey, these are the teams we think are the best, just based off of the numbers. And I'm sure you could have a computer do that. Maybe that's how the BCS model worked, but I would be intrigued by having human beings kind of judge those things. And then let's see what it looks like compared to the other one. The other one can still be official. Just give me something different, right? Give me something different. All right, taking a look here. Billy chimes back into the program. We'll let him double dip on the text line for sure. He says, Swanee, up north, the roofs are designed with a different loading for snow. He said, we do not have to do that here. The more you know, Billy, the more you know. I had no idea. Like, I wondered. So, okay. So, with that being said, Billy, is there a concern in the South when there is a lot of snow on roofs? Like, should we be concerned? Should I be hanging out in the downstairs of the house? Is the upstairs no longer safe with a heavy amount of snow on the roof? The other thing, too, about snow, and I don't know if we get that much rain or if it's the fact that snow can accumulate over time and then it all melts at the same time. But, man, the ground was so mushy everywhere. It was just gross. It was gross on Sunday, even Saturday afternoon. We had a blast walking in. We went for a walk in the woods, me and my daughter and I, and that was really fun. But I got to say, the amount of just water on the ground after it all melted, it was like a torrential downpour had happened. And I guess that's because it just all is sitting there and then all melts at the same time. I don't know. Haven't been around enough snow to give you a full determination on that, quite frankly. I'm not smart enough. I didn't even know they did roofs different in New York and stuff, but I guess they should. I guess they should. I guess they have to. Kind of a byproduct of having what Mike, you would say 110 inches of snow one winter? That's like 10 feet. That's the other thing I can't imagine. Like, you see pictures online, and I don't know if they're fake. Because if you're like, oh, they can't be fake, Swanee, that's real snow. Like, I know, but nothing stops somebody from getting their buddies. I would assume. It's not as if I've ever had this opportunity. But it seems like it would be quite plausible that you could go out of your garage and then you could push snow up until it covered the complete front door, right? Like, I mean, that's not hard to imagine to me. Maybe it's impossible to do, but it's not hard to imagine. And then opening the door on the inside of your house and making it look like you had snow all the way, up 6 or 8 feet, whatever that is. And, I mean, you see those pictures. I mean, I don't know. The most snow I've probably ever seen, 6 or 8 inches. Now, outside of, like, if you go skiing. I'm just not certain if that's a real thing or do people, like, fake that, push them that direction. Don't forget, 7 o'clock, about an hour from tip-off, Clemson will take on the Duke Blue Devils up in Durham. Brad Brownell just 3-10 all-time against the Blue Devils. Clemson with just 4 wins in Durham all-time. Duke, again, a top 10 ranked team. Clemson, a team still trying to find their way after a 3-game skid. Of course, they got back to good with a blowout victory over the Pitt Panthers, but there is no comfort in Tiger Town when it comes down to this Clemson basketball team and Coach Brad Brownell. A blowout over Pitt, yeah, that's a great thing. I mean, if you lost to Pitt, you might not be working this week. That's the way I think a lot of people feel about this program. People can get over losing at Duke this weekend or tonight. People can get over that. But the truth be told, this is the type game that Brad Brownell finds a way to win, and I think he needs to. I think he's got to find a way to, sneak in some additional victories that surprise people, and this would be one. The Clemson Tiger staff will be wearing sneakers and pullovers for Coaches versus Cancer to help raise awareness to fight against cancer. That's going on tonight as well. So take a look at all that information, or take a look at that during the game today. Again, coming up in about an hour, Clemson in Duke. Certainly Duke is Duke. They're on TV more than Leave It to Beaver reruns. That, of course, was first said by Pete Gillen, the former Virginia coach. We got to get out of here until tomorrow. As always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers.